Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? All right, we got one more person coming in and then we'll get started. I'm good, Nitzy. Thank you for asking. It was a good weekend and yeah, up early this morning. We got some rain this weekend. I'm pretty happy. So awesome. All right, we got just one more person coming in. Hey, Taylor, are you joining with a second device? Oh, maybe she can't hear me. Okay. All right. Well, guys, we are rolling. We are officially in week 5 this week. I'm just working on getting a poll everywhere question up. So let me drop that link into the chat and we'll get started with a few questions. Actually, we've got a bunch of questions today. So roll back to Zoom real quick. There we go. Okay, I think everybody is in. So here's the link for Poll Everywhere. And I went ahead and activated the first question. I think I did. Yep, there we go. So just want to know how you guys are feeling as we head into week 5. Gosh, it's going fast. It's going fast. Go presentation mode. Okay, good. And I got everything activated the way it needed to be. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys so we're all looking at the same thing. Again, if you guys are coming in just now, there's a link in the chat to Poll Everywhere questions. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can look at it together. All right, so just want to get an idea of how everybody is doing. I deactivated it. Percent. All right, everybody's good. Good in the upper half anyway. So that's excellent news. So, all right. So just we're going to do quite a bit of Poll Everywhere stuff today because I've got some quizzes that we're going to do and we're going to do them fairly fast. So I want to make sure everybody is either on the website or on a laptop or on with your phone, because we're going to do some rapid fire stuff here in just a second. So all right, and if you guys are having issues with Poll Everywhere, please speak up now or forever hold your peace. So let me get my timer going. I don't know how the timer thing works. Okay. Cool. So let's go ahead and roll to our next question, which will hopefully be activated and ready to go. So this series of questions today, guys, with Poll Everywhere is going to be us actually reviewing material from last week. So last week, you guys spent a lot of time learning about rangelands that occur not only here in the US, but also rangeland types that occur throughout the world and rangeland soils. And the soils lecture was very basic. I wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page because some people have had soils with Dr. Lyles and some people have not. And so it's really important to just have a good understanding of the basics when we go to analyze soil, because that is really going to play a huge part in how rangeland or how prolific rangeland soils are. So in order to get that beautiful result of good forage and good vegetation for grazing to take place, you have to have a good combination between precipitation and favorable soils. And so we don't have that a lot of the time. And I'm sorry that people are on the back end of this this question this morning. If you guys are having issues or it's something I can help with, please feel free to reach out. So I know that usually week 4, week 5 is when all the classes start getting really, really hard, and it feels like an even heavier lift than it was. So hang in there. You guys can do this. I have faith. All right, so let's go ahead and roll to our next question, and I'll give you guys 30 seconds here. It should be activated, and then we'll kind of discuss as we go through here. So this is the time for you guys to absolutely ask questions. All right, so blank is a very large ecosystem that is recognized by major plant and animal communities. So this means that you can look at plant communities and animal communities together to determine what this classification is. All right, so we've got, let's do 10 more seconds here. We got a couple people that haven't replied yet. All right, let's go ahead and get those last answers in. Okay, so here's our responses. So some of you are saying it's the ecoregion. Some of you are saying that it is a biome. Those of you guys that chose biome, you are correct. So biome is going to be the largest classification system when it comes to how we put a sort on rangeland regions. So biomes are recognizable from space. We tend to look at biomes in maps, whereas ecoregions and ecotones are smaller. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our next question because it's related, and then we can stop and ask some questions about this stuff. So blank is a very large ecosystem that is recognized by major plants and animal communities. All right, so we'll give you 30 seconds here.
Dr. Diatley, it doesn't say the question is active on our end.
Okay, interesting. I don't know why it doesn't activate. All right, now is it active?
It just says web voting has not been turned on for this poll. I don't know if anyone else is having that message pop up or if it's just me.
No, I'm having that issue too.
Okay.
Now it's working.
Okay, there we go. I had to go back in and choose some stuff. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. All right, so we'll start our 30 seconds over. All right, got about 15 seconds left for the last 5 of you that don't have answers in. All right, let's go ahead and get them submitted. Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and lock these answers in. So our responses are ecoregion. A high percentage of people also chose biome, and an ecotone. So keep in mind, we just defined biome in the previous slide. Okay. Oh, hang on. Did I not have the right question up? Damn it. All right, hang on. Sorry. Everything is messed up. Okay, so this question should have been blank. Gosh dang it, I don't even know where it's at. So we'll just start with the definitions. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what is going on with Poll Everywhere this morning. So an eco or a biome is easily recognizable by space, and it's usually going to be defined as similar plant community and similar animals. Okay, so, and those are going to be big, broad categories. So plant communities are going to be big things like shrubs or grasses, and grasses can get a little bit subcategorized into annual grasses or perennial, but as a whole, those are still really big categories. And then on the animal side, those can be categorized pretty broadly as like ruminants, or sorry, not ruminants, but omnivores and herbivores. And so when we get into the animal section, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about those types and how and why it's important that they actually have habitat to function in those certain areas. So biomes are big. Ecoregions are smaller. They're actually identifiable within a biome. And so with our ecoregions, that's where we can start getting into some additional details. So for us here in California, a good example would be with annual grasslands would be foothill annual grasslands versus kind of flat, true annual grasslands. And so the ecoregions get quite a bit more specific because in the way that they're classified even further down is through plant and animals as well, but we get to species specifics at that point in time. So on the animal side, an example of annual grasslands differences between between ecoregions would be areas that are conducive to browsers, like our wildlife species or goats. So those are going to be areas that have some shrubs associated with the annual grasslands versus areas that are purely annual grasses and are really conducive to things like cattle and sheep for the most part. And so ecoregions are going to be within biomes. And then ecotones are even smaller. They're more intricately classified than an ecoregion. And you can walk to an ecotone within the same acreage. So a good example of this is if you were out at Bidwell Park and you walk like up towards up like Monkey Face, you're going to walk through a different ecotone down at the kind of the head of the trail. And then when you walk up to Monkey Face and on the top, you're actually in a different ecotone because there's more trees and shrubs and brush and stuff up there. And so ecotones are really, really intricately categorized, and usually in different ecotones you can see different subspecies of grasses. So you in the spring you might see things like annual rye and annual rye and ripgut brome and those type of things down at the head of the trail before you climb up on Monkey Face. And then up at the top, because the soil is much more shallow, you will see things like Medusa head actually take over there as well. And so biomes, ecoregions, ecotones, that's starting big and getting smaller. All right, so let's roll back to poll everywhere again, and I'm hoping that this is going to work. So, and I've got some rapid fire questions for you guys where we're going to spend like 15 seconds here, as long as I can get it kind of figured out. So, all right. So we're activated now. Hopefully that is good. That is good. Okay, and you guys have the ability to respond. Okay, so the US is classified as blank climate. So you got 3 choices here. We'll give you 10 more seconds because most of you guys have your results in already. All right, go ahead and submit them now. Okay, so our responses are a few tropical and temperate. Okay, so as much as I would love to be in a tropical region, because I love the tropics, we are not. So we are in a temperate region. And so temperate region, again, is going to be that region that lies between the tropical regions and the polar regions. And so for us, that captures all of the US. And that is really important to remember because temperate means that we have changing weather patterns and changing climate, whereas tropical has a pretty consistent climate. It's fairly warm and has quite a bit of moisture, whereas the polar climate tends to be pretty cold and has little moisture. That temperate region where we lie is really where we get quite a bit of variation in our climate types. Okay, let's go to our next question. I think go ahead and activate it. That is done. Okay, so for the next series of questions, you guys are going to be looking at this map, and I'm going to encourage you not to go to your notes, okay? It's really important that you guys can get this memorized. All right, so on this figure, identify where tall grass prairie is at. All right, we're going to take 15 seconds here. Five seconds to go. Tall grass prairie. All right, and we're gonna go ahead and lock in these answers. Okay, so if you guys were over here in this area, and I hope you can see my cursor, towards the plains, you are in the right area. So tall grass prairie is, the way that I remember that is the more east we go, the more precipitation we get, the bigger and the taller the grass is. So tall grass prairie is this dark orange area over here that kind of comes through part of North and South Dakota, part of Nebraska, Kansas, and the very northeastern corner of Oklahoma. And then it'll also go into Iowa and the top of Missouri as well. And so this dark orange area over here, again, is tall grass prairie. All right, so most of you guys are kind of in the right realm. All right, so let's do another one here. So we are unlocked. We're going to activate. That is correct. And that is correct. Okay, short grass prairie. So on this image, tell me where short grass prairie is at. Okay, and we're going to go 15 seconds here. All right, 5 seconds to go. All right, great. We're going to lock these answers in. You guys, for the most part, are correct. If you're in this yellow area, that is short grass prairie. So again, keep in mind, I always equate the prairie ecosystems in the prairie biomes to how much precipitation we get. So we get a lot of precipitation over here in the east, a lot in volume and consistency, right? And then as we move towards the Rocky Mountains, that precipitation gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so we have less precipitation happen up here close to the Rockies. Therefore, we have shorter grasses. All right, so next question is pinyon juniper. So we should be activated now. That's good, that's good. So where is the pinyon juniper ecosystems at? All right, we'll give you 15 seconds here as well. All right, 5 to go. Go ahead, get your answers in. You guys are doing good. And we're gonna lock in these answers. Okay. We're a little bit all over the place. Okay. So the pinyon juniper ecosystem is an ecosystem that is highly distinguishable because it has a combination of pinyon pine trees and juniper trees. And they really will become prevalent as patches. And so the gray areas here through central New Mexico, up through the Four Corners region and into Utah, a little bit through central Arizona. And then we have a little bit over on the east side, like as we go into Reno and start down 395 on the eastern side of the Sierras. We see a little bit of patching, pinyon juniper patching in central Nevada, and just a little bit in southwestern Idaho and northern Nevada as well. And so pinyon junipers are an interesting ecosystem. It definitely, they aren't all packed together. So that is one of the big reasons that we actually have pulled the pinyon juniper biome out, because we have to manage it differently. So especially, so for example, if we get into an area that has like a bunch of grasses or a bunch of shrubs, and you get some interfacing with pinyon, pine, and juniper trees, then the amount of vegetation that is available to grazing animals like cattle and sheep and wildlife species decreases significantly, because they don't like to eat pinyon pine or juniper, and those trees actually take up resources that could support grasses. And so if you're managing animals in that area, you have to take into account that decrease in vegetation. And so you have to compensate with timing and frequency of grazing schemes. And most significantly, you have to compensate with stocking rate. All right, good job. Let's roll to our next question. All right, activate it. So oak woodlands, where are the oak woodlands at? All right, 15 seconds here. Five seconds to go. All right, guys, great job. We'll go ahead and lock these in. I think you've got it. There is quite a bit of overlap over here, but the dark red areas along the California Central Valley is considered oak woodlands, and we have a huge patch of oak woodlands through central and eastern Texas up into northeastern Arkansas. And so those are going to be habitats where oak trees, there's a bunch of different varieties and species of oak trees actually are going to be dominant there as the overstory, and the understory is going to support different types of grasses. In our neck of the woods, it's going to be annual grasses. In Texas's neck of the wood, it's going to be a combination of annuals and perennials. So great job. Okay, let's roll to our next question here. Intermountain grasslands. So we'll give you 15 seconds here as well. 5 seconds to go, guys. And go ahead and lock them in. Okay, so here we're a little bit all over the map. The Intermountain Grasslands region is going to be this darker orange region. So we've got 3 distinct areas through kind of the northern Pacific Northwest. So we've got a little bit in south central Montana, northern Wyoming. We've got a little bit in western Montana, and then the largest portion of Intermountain Grasslands is actually through what we call the Palouse Prairie in northeastern Oregon and eastern Washington. And so again, the orange areas are going to be the Intermountain Grasslands. And so these areas are really going to lie in between big mountain ranges. So we've got the Rocky Mountains that are coming up over here to the east, and we've got the Cascades and the kind of coastal mountain system that is in the west. And so within those regions, if you remember back to the climate lecture, within those regions, we're actually creating 2 rain shadows. And so the way that the Intermountain Grassland ecosystem is positioned, they actually get some fairly dependable precipitation during the springtime and into the summer. And so because they're in the upper part of the US, and so they've got a little bit more dependency on precipitation at that point in time. And so what you see here is pockets of grasslands that are primarily going to be perennial grasses, some of the best grasses in the world. They're bunch grasses, meaning that the grass grows together, and they have root systems that go down sometimes to 10 feet in depth in the soil. It's pretty crazy. Unfortunately, a lot of grasslands, especially through Washington and northeastern Oregon, have been converted into farmland. And so we aren't seeing nearly as much grazing land in those regions as we used to. So the soil is actually really pretty good. So agriculture development has taken place. Okay, let's roll to our next question. Get it activated. Sagebrush steppe. So where is the sagebrush steppe? I'll give you 15 seconds here as well. All right, 5 seconds to go, guys. And let's go ahead and lock in our answers. Awesome, you guys are on it. So the sagebrush steppe areas are the light purple areas. It's one of the larger biomes in the West. So I'm not really counting the grasslands over here in the middle part of the country. But when we look at the Western states, the sagebrush steppe is one of the largest ecosystems. And so it is really expansive. It goes all the way from central Washington down a strip down through Oregon, most of Nevada, a good part of western Utah, and southern Idaho. And then we have this really interesting conundrum that occurs over here through most of Wyoming and northern Colorado, where we've got sagebrush steppe in that area as well. And so keep in mind that we've got mountain systems that are mountain ranges that kind of encompass both sides of this. So we've got the Rocky Mountains that create kind of a big valley through here, and that it's still at high elevation. The soils really aren't super great. So this is really good sagebrush steppe country. And we're going to be talking about sagebrush steppe a lot as we get going through the semester. Great job. All right, so let's roll to one of our last ones, get this activated, mixed prairie. So where is the mixed prairie here? Again, we'll give you 15 seconds. All right, 5 seconds to go, guys. Awesome. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and lock these responses in. You guys got it for the most part, so great job. If the mixed prairie is gonna be a combination of shorter species grasses and longer species grasses. And then there's gonna be some unique grasses, unique species that are technically classified as kind of a mixed or an intermediate prairie grass. And that's gonna be through the lighter orange color here in the center. So as we move from the Rockies with shortgrass prairie in yellow, as we move east to the central part of the country, where we get more precipitation, it's more dependable, and our soils tend to be a little bit more fertile, we're going to start getting bigger grasses. More precipitation equals bigger grasses. All right. Great, let's go. I think we've got a couple more here. All right, desert shrubland and grasslands. So where are desert shrublands and grasslands? And we'll give you 15 seconds here as well. All right, 5 seconds to go. Fantastic. All right, we're going to go ahead and lock these responses in. You guys have got it. So and I don't know if we've got it because we're getting towards the end. I'm going to just assume that you know it so well. But the desert shrublands and grasslands is going to be kind of this beige color down here. It goes through the southwest. Part of this area is habitable or is grazable, and part of it isn't, I'll be honest. So there's parts of Southern California, with the exception of the Imperial Valley, that will only have slate and creosote. And so grazing animals don't do very well down there, and you won't see a ton of wildlife. But then there's areas like the eastern side of the Sierra Nevadas down around Bishop, Mammoth area that is on the verge of being in sagebrush steppe country, but it's still technically desert shrubland and grasses just because of the precipitation that doesn't occur, honestly. And then as we go down through southern New Mexico into West Texas, South and West Texas, and as well as a lot of northern Mexico is all considered desert shrublands and grasslands as well. And so in the US, we're dealing with 3 distinct deserts. So over here in California, for the most part, is going to be the Mojave Desert. In Arizona is primarily going to be the Sonoran Desert. Those have the fun cactuses. And then through the New Mexico down into West Texas, that is going to be part of what we call the Chihuahuan Desert, which has cacti. They're different species though, and it gets even less precipitation. So these areas are definitely semi-arid. There is some talk among scientists and researchers that we may need to reclassify the desert Southwest as arid instead of semi-arid just because of climate change. So I'm not going to venture into that, but it is kind of an interesting discussion. All right, next question. Annual grasslands. Go ahead and activate it. I think we're set to go. Yes. All right, annual grasslands. All right, 5 seconds to go here. And we're going to lock these responses in. So, yep, you guys got it. I am very happy to hear that because we've been talking about annual grasslands on and off for 5 weeks. This is part of our Mediterranean climate, or a product of our Mediterranean climate in California. It really refers to the Central Valley that hasn't been converted into farmland, as well as the coastal mountain ranges. So those are going to be annual grasslands. We see some shrubbery in those areas, but for the most part along the edges of it is going to be the oak woodlands. And so we're going to talk about annual grasslands a lot. It's a unique ecosystem Some range scientists don't even consider California to have any rangeland if it's not sagebrush steppe, but it is range. We have to manage it differently. And so, great job. Okay, next question for you. One of our last ones, so salt desert shrublands. So where are the salt desert shrublands at? All right, 5 more seconds here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and lock these responses in. Thank you for that. Okay, so we are a little bit all over the place, which is okay. So with the salt desert shrublands, these are definitely related to the sagebrush steppe. You are going to see sagebrush in some of these ecosystems, but the salt desert shrublands is actually characterized by the soil, not necessarily precipitation and global position. So in these areas, because all of the western part of the US at one point in time was an ocean, as those tectonic plates actually started rising and going up in elevation, we actually saw large deposits of what we call salty soils or alkaline soils. And so these alkaline soils are really spottily deposited. And so they are represented on this map by the dark purple colors. And so we have we've got a little bit of it in Eastern California, kind of around Bridgeport area. And a lot of it occurs in Western Nevada. So all of Reno is kind of those alkaline soils as well. And it goes up and just has a finger into Oregon. So if you've ever been up outside of Lakeview, like you're headed to Adele, that is all salt desert shrubland as well. We see quite a bit of it along the Nevada-Utah border. So if you guys have ever been on I-80 towards Salt Lake City, there is the Salt Flats, and that is a big part of this as well. And then we've got some patchiness in parts of the other state as well. So salt desert shrublands really has to do with the soil being very alkaline, so high in pH, meaning that there's only certain types of plants that will grow there. And one of them is what we call the salt desert shrub. And and there's also salt grass that will grow in those areas too. From a management standpoint for our grazing animals, we really have to be careful in these regions because the soil and the plants are actually going to intake a lot of salt. So because they're grazing on this area, there has to be water readily available. And one thing to just kind of be aware of is that a lot of those water sources like stock ponds that are out on rangeland and those type of things, if they aren't improved, meaning that they don't have, they haven't been retrofitted with like a pond lining, and they're actually pumping water out of a deeper elevation into the stock tank so that it's back to a normal pH of 7, then you can get into some salt toxicity in the cows. They'll basically drink themselves to death because they're so thirsty. But the more they drink, the more salt they intake, and it just messes up the sodium potassium pumps, and they end up kind of suffocating, their lungs shut down. So those are some things just to be aware of. You want to make sure that they've got plenty of forage that doesn't have a ton of salt associated with it or doesn't uptake the massive amounts of salt. And there is some out there. So just be aware of that. All right, next question. Okay, switching to soils. So we'll give you guys about 30 seconds here. 45% of the soil is made up of which component? Water, mineral, air, or organic matter? All right, 10 seconds to go here, guys. All right, we're gonna go ahead and lock these answers in. Thank you. All right, so where are our responses at? So part of us say mineral, part of us say air and organic matter. If you said mineral, you are correct. So the largest portion of soil, the largest single portion of soil is made up of minerals. Great, great. Okay, let's go to our next question. Okay, so organic matter makes up what percentage of soil? 20 to 30, 45, 10, or 5? Right. Got my timer going, so we got about 20 seconds left here. Oh, you guys are good. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and lock in these answers. Fantastic. Okay, let's see where our responses are at. Okay, cool. So we've got a little bit of discrepancy, and this may just be you needing to go back and review stuff. Really important to make sure that we have a good handle on soil because these 4 different components actually work together really well. So the proportion of the different categories of materials that we see in soil is like that for a reason. So the answer here is going to be 5%. So usually we do not see organic matter percentages in soil higher than 6% across the US. Now, there is some cool research out there that is trying to change this because organic matter is where some of our fertility comes from, but it's also where our water holding capacity comes from. So if you guys are familiar with the Regenerative Ag Center, Dr. Cindy Daly has led that effort, and there's a bunch of scientists doing some good work there, but they're really looking at and researching whether we can improve soil organic matter to basically hold more water, which would really help us out during drought. So it's kind of a cool concept. I think that it's a little bit controversial because improving soil is a big endeavor that's going to take a lot of inputs. And so those are some things that we can talk about later on through the semester as well. But organic matter makes up the smallest percentage of soil as an individual component at 5% or less typically. Right. Okay, let's talk through some of our soils. So particle size characteristics are described as texture, structure, depth, pH, or fertility. So we'll give you guys 30 seconds here as well. All right, 10 seconds to go, guys. All right, great. We're going to go ahead and lock these answers in. Let's see where our responses are at. Okay, so we're split either between soil texture or soil structure. Okay, so soil texture has to do with particle size. And so let me switch over and we'll look at this from the lecture perspective. There we go. Mess that up, hang on. Okay, so soil texture, again, refers to the particle size of the soil particles. And so we can have really, really small ones, or we can have really big particles. So sand would be something that would be actually fairly coarse. So it's pretty big from a particle standpoint. whereas clay is going to be really, really small. And so these soil particle sizes is really, really important relative to water holding capacity. So if we think of clay soils, like Butte County has a lot of, because we have rice, we have a lot of rice in South Butte County, that clay soil is really conducive because it holds water pretty well. And so, and whereas in if you go to the ocean and we're on like the sandy beach and stuff, as the water comes up onto the beach, you can see that water sink through that sand really, really quickly. And that's because the soil particles are really quite big. Even though if they get that sand gets everywhere, it doesn't feel good, right? The reason that it ends up being so itchy and everything else is because those particles are actually pretty big compared to other soil types. All right, so again, our particle size is referring to the texture of the soil. And so texture becomes really important relative to how those particles are oriented to one another and how much water they can actually hold. All right, let's go back to poll everywhere again. Sorry, I see some chat stuff in here. Okay, I think we're good. All right, next question. We're getting close to being done. Okay, particle size. Oh, we just did that one. Hang on, let me go back. There we go. All right, so nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium soil content along with other minerals determines what? Soil texture, organic matter, pH, depth, fertility, or structure. All right, so we'll give you guys about 20 seconds here. All right, 10 seconds to go. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to lock these in. There we go. Great, let's look at our responses. Okay, so we are a little bit all over the place, but most of us got it. So soil fertility is the answer here. So the big minerals are the big elements that we measure in soil that really tell us how fertile a soil is going to be nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So N, P, and K, if you guys have heard about that before. So these are things that, like, if you go buy fertilizer for your lawn, they typically are going to have numbers oriented in N, P, and K. So how much nitrogen it has, phosphorus, and potassium. And so that's the big component associated with soil fertility in that 45% of the soil matter, which is that mineral content. Okay, and I think we're about done here. One last one, then I'm going to let you guys get out of here. Okay, so with blank on rangeland, we can manage vegetation cover to protect its profile. So is that precipitation or is that soil? All right, just going to give you guys 5 more seconds here. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and lock these in. Okay, so this is soil. So when we manage for soil on rangeland, we have to make sure that we manage enough vegetation cover to protect the topsoil, okay, which is the soil profile. All right, and then our last question today is with precipitation or soil on rangeland, which one do we use to manage the amount of vegetation used, the timing of grazing, and the frequency of grazing? All right, we'll go just another 10 seconds here as well. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and lock these answers in. Thank you guys so much for participating today. Precipitation was the other one here. So when precipitation actually hits rangeland, depending on how much it is, that allows us to manage when we can graze, how much we can graze, and how often we can come back and graze. And so those precipitation is going to manage those aspects. We're going to use soil to manage the vegetation cover as well. All right, so that was kind of a lot of questions, right? And so the reason for that is because I wanted to make sure that we were all up to speed, because now we are going to start diving into really specific components of rangeland management. And so the material that you'll see on Blackboard this week is going to be starting down that pathway. So this week we are looking at ecology. So because this is a grazing ecology class, our first kind of deep dive into this area is going to be ecological components and functions. And so just keep in mind that your quiz is going to be due on Friday, and we're also going to meet for lab this week, and we're going to dive into the beginning part of the grazing management plan, and we're going to finish up the strength finders activity. So please make sure that you bring your strengths and your descriptions with you to lab. All right. Yes, Raylene, the Bear Fire paper is just as a resource for you guys. If you hadn't seen that before, that was written by Dr. Dave Daly as a Facebook post that the LA Times picked up when the Bear Fire actually went through his allotment and killed almost 400 head of cows. So that was this time last year. And so I wanted you to just, it's sad. I'll tell you that up front, but it's something that we need to care about. And we're going to talk about fire on rangeland a lot. So, all right, guys, I'm happy to hang out for a few more minutes, answer any questions that you may have. And if you don't have any, that's totally fine. I will see you at 2 p.m. on Wednesday in lab.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, Casey, did you get my email by chance?
I haven't. When did you send it, Court?
I sent it. It was either Thursday or